In this video, I'm going to show you how to use the booking calendar to check for open inventory, and then a very brief intro into dashboards and reports. So first off, we use the booking calendar in two different scenarios. The first and the most common is when you're actually creating a campaign for a client. I've outlined how to do that in another video that follows the insertion order process. This is specifically if you're just looking to see which ads are available next week, next month, what ads are running in the AM report, so on and so forth. So, if I'm just looking to see, hey, what's available, what's going on next week, you want to navigate over to the Booking Calendar tab. And then, as you can see, there's three different sections. The most important is this top section, and then the second. We don't really use the third one too much. So you really want to choose, what day you want to look at. You can choose next week. You can choose super far into the future. It's really just up to you. It's always going to change for the start date to be on a Monday and the end date to be on a Sunday. So it doesn't matter if you choose, like, let's say, if you try to choose the second. When you actually hit show, it'll automatically change this to Sunday. So let's look at the next 2 weeks. So let's see. We're going to start on the 26th of February and then go until the 11th of March. You can ignore the chart type and the date range, although if you did want to just maybe look at next month or use one of these filters, you can, but it's usually just easier just to enter the start and the end date. For now, we're going to ignore the time columns. I'll show you a bug that happens when you choose a larger date range, but for now, we're just going to keep it simple. If you were attaching the inventory to a media campaign, the name of the campaign would be here. You have the option to do high or low detail. There's really not much of a need for the high one. It does take longer to load if you choose the high level of detail, so typically I just do the low. Okay, so the second section is trying to figure out which exact inventory you want to look at. So in Salesforce, there's three different determinations for figuring out which ad position you want to see. The first is the site. An example of that would be the AM and PM reports, the front and story pages, exclusive sections, so kind of like the highest category of all our ad inventory that we offer. The second is the placement, so that's getting a little bit more specific. So if we were looking at the AM and PM reports, the placement would be the AM report. Or if we're looking at exclusive sections, it would be the business section. The third and the most specific of the three categorizations is the ad type. So this is if you're looking at the AM report Big Box 1, or if you're only looking at Big Box 2, or Big Box 6, so on and so forth. So you really, if you use all three of these fields, it'll have a more specific, sorry about that, a very specific inventory will show up. The more general you are, the more ad positions will show up. So let's say you want to look at let's do the exclusive sections right now just for an example. Let's say I want to look at the business section, Big Box 3. So I choose first the site, which is going to be our exclusive section. Next, I choose the placement, which would be our business section. And then third would be the actual ad type. So let's say I want to do Big Box 3. I'm very specific. I know exactly what I want to look at. So now I hit show. You can ignore this content field and the rate card. That will always be there. So we don't have to change anything. Hit show. Now we can see on the bottom here, it's showing us the exclusive section, the business section, Big Box 3. It shows the list price, which is also the open rate. And then it's looking at for next week and the week after that. So let's say we didn't just want to look at the Big Box 3. Let's say we want to look at all of the ad positions in business. We would just delete the ad type and then hit show. So now it's no longer specifically looking at Big Box 3. Instead, if it finished loading, it shows us all the positions available. One thing to note that the reason it took longer to load is because we're looking at so many different things. You know, we're looking at 2 different weeks and then every single ad position. So this can be really helpful to use the more general, just the placement, if you're trying to get an idea of what's open in that section. Another good example is we usually want to look at the AM report. So I'm going to just quickly show us how to do that. So you would choose Site, AM and PM reports. Oh, and then another good thing to note is that you aren't limited to only look at one site. You can choose multiple sites. So just to make this example even more better for understanding how this works, I'm going to also do, say, the AM report, and then let's do run of site, or the front and story pages. So I'm going to click 2 different sites to look at, which means I'll also have to click 2 different placements. So we'll do the AM report, and then I want to look at just the general run of site, which is like the home page. Okay, so I'm looking at 2 different things now. Let's say I want to get more specific for the AM report. Let's do AM report big box 1, big box 2, and then run of site, big box 1, big box 2. Okay, so now I have 4 different ad positions that I'm taking a look at in 2 different placements, also in 2 different sites. So now I'll hit show. And we'll see, so it's broken it up by which site and which placement. You can see here that the big box 1 and big box 2 in the AM report is booked for next week, so there's no more slots available. But the big box 2 is open next week on the 5th of March. And then if we look at our front and story pages, big box 1, so 3 of those ad slots are taken and 2 are open. And then on the week of the 5th, 2 are taken and 3 are open. If I wanted to know exactly who's taking those 3 slots, you can click that little eye. And you'll see, oh, okay, so it's the Puppet Fest, it's Pacifica, and the apartments at Los Caneros. And hit close. So that's really good for looking at multiple different ad positions if you just want to, kind of get a good picture of exactly what's going on. Another thing you can do is if you're looking at, let's say, a larger time frame. Let's say you have a client that wants to book maybe a 26-week long contract or half a year. So we'll have the start date be next week Monday, and the end date, let's go way far out. Let's go till the end of the year. Let's go all the way till December 30th. So I'm not sure if you noticed, but by doing that, by choosing an end date that was really far or more than a few weeks from the start date, the system went and changed the time columns drop-down field to months instead of weeks. So when I hit show, let's choose a site so we don't have to wait forever for this to load. Let's do front and story pages. Run of site. Let's just do big box 2. How about that? Okay, so now our time column is hit to months. So let's hit show. And as you can see, nothing's showing up. That is because our booking calendar is set to only look at weeks. So when the time column changes to months, it doesn't know what to do because everything that we have is set to only look at month periods and week periods, and months is not what it's meant to do. So what you're going to have to do when this happens is you just have to change the time column back to weeks, and then you have to hit show again. And because this is such a long time frame, it might take a second. So also note that it changed the from date and the until date to be a little bit wider than we were originally looking at. So just kind of be aware of that. But it's one of the issues and one of the quirks of the system that we have to kind of deal with because we have this whole week system in place. So just know that that will occasionally happen. So if I want to look and see, all right, so Big Box 2, let's see, it's pretty much available. So you got 3 ads in it for these couple weeks. 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, all the way through the rest of the year. All right, so that looks pretty good. That looks open. So if I had a client, I would communicate that to them and say, hey, we actually have a pretty good amount of availability for our Big Box 2 run of sight. So that's the basics of the booking calendar. One other thing to note is just the legends, which it just changes the color of each of these little blocks depending on what the availability is. So if there was all the positions available, it would be that bright green. If there was one on offer, it'd be like a medium green. Booked and offered means you're not available, yellow. Not available is red. If for some reason, this shouldn't really happen very often, we have 2 ads booked, there's only 1 position, it's going to be overbooked and it'll show up as hot pink. Okay, so that's it for the booking calendar. It's kind of a good little intro. So that's if you just want to go and see, hey, what's available here, and you're maybe on the phone with your client or some sort of scenario like that. Another thing I want to quickly go over is some reports and dashboards that I think will be useful to you, just to keep track of kind of where you're at for revenue and what all your accounts and everything are doing. So I've actually gone ahead and created a custom link to a Google Doc that kind of outlines reports that would be good for you, because we do have a lot of dashboards and reports in the system, but a lot of them are not really relevant to what you're doing. So if you go to this bottom left-hand corner and you see Kimberly's dashboards, go ahead and click on that. It'll take you to a Google Doc that reminds you the different rules whenever you look at a report. You always, every time when you look at one, want to hit refresh, because it just goes and picks up whatever the data was from last time that dashboard was looked at. And that can be, a month ago, a week ago, or perhaps just when another media campaign hadn't been booked. So you always want to make sure you refresh that. Another thing is too, you also want to make sure, another thing is too, when you click on the report, it's actually going to drill down and list everything that you're needed. The third is you kind of want to ignore the chart. You never want to try to edit any of the reports or dashboards. You're just kind of viewing them. So here's a list of 4 dashboards that I think you might use. The first, just looking at the revenue per month. This is a report we typically go over in all of our sales meetings on Monday. The second dashboard is if you're looking at specifically special section revenue, like let's say for Salute to Nurses or Reimagine Santa Barbara. If you're selling into one of those, this takes all that revenue out of our normal revenue and kind of puts it in its own bucket, and it's easy to sort. The third is the number of booked media campaigns per month per year. So if you want to see how many booked media campaigns you've completed in the last month, you can use this report. And the last one is taking a look at which accounts have not been contacted in the last 30, 60, or 90 days. That's just a brief overview. I'll quickly go through them with you as well. So you just want to click on the link, and then it should open in a new tab. So this is the best practice. Always hit this refresh button, because as you can see, this report hasn't been refreshed since yesterday at 12:35. So hit refresh before doing anything. And sometimes these reports can take a while because they're sorting through so much data. And especially if you don't have any of these filters on, it can be sorting through data from like over 2-3 years ago. So it can take a second, so just be patient. Now, these 3 filters at the top, these help to kind of filter all the data to make it load faster. So the first one is the year range, and your options are this fiscal year, last fiscal year, this and last, which is a comparison report. This year, last fiscal year, last 2 fiscal years, so this would be 2018, 2017, 2016, so on and so forth. So that's a really good filter to always use because you're typically just looking at this fiscal year. So for this example, I'll do this fiscal year. Month range is going to be this fiscal month or last fiscal month. Same thing as comparison. There's 2 months ago. Yeah, it goes all the way down. So let's say I want to look at this fiscal month, this fiscal year, and then revenue schedule owner. This is the person who actually owns the revenue for each of these media campaigns that we're separating out for. So if you want to look at yourself, you just do Kimberly. But you also have the option to look at no one. So if you want to see everyone together, all you have to do is just not choose a filter. Or you can choose yourself. So you can see all this information. If you put your mouse over it, it'll also give you that quick little summary. So you can see you sold 9,714 for this fiscal month, so in February in 2018. If you had any revenue in the pipeline, like let's say there was a media campaign that you're waiting for a client to sign off on, it would show up here. If you want to get more specifics and you want to know exactly which accounts and which media campaigns are bringing in this revenue, all you have to do is click on it. So this is the graph that I was saying you don't really want to edit. You just kind of want to look at it, but mostly it's this information down here that you're after. So very briefly, you can see which advertiser it is, which ad position it is, which media campaign it's attached to, which rate, and exactly how much the amount net 3 is for. And these are all some summary of, I think of the amount net 3 for 2018. Yep, for this fiscal quarter, and then for February. If you had chosen to look at multiple months, it would have it then broken down further. But so this is really good to get at a glance view. If you wanted to then, let's say for your own records, wanted to export this to an Excel worksheet or maybe for Google Docs, all you have to do is come up here and do export details, and you could do that. Now, so now you have an Excel worksheet of all the clients that you've worked on last fiscal year. I'll just quickly show you since my computer usually goes pretty fast. And it involves information, you can hide stuff that you don't need to see necessarily, and all sorts of fun things like that. You could also, if you want to maybe just like print out this report, there's a printable view option, which you could then, you could print this. It's not super pretty, but you could also just print this page. Lots of options there if that's what you're trying to do. So this is the revenue by month. So this is a report, and then you just want to go back to the dashboard. Here's the revenue by month dashboard. Okay, so that could be pretty helpful. Another one I thought that might be useful is the special sections revenue. Same with this report. You always want to hit refresh. And the filters on this one are a little bit different. So the one we just looked at was year range, month range, and revenue schedule owner. This one is year range. The placement is the actual special section. So El Nino, emergency preparedness, so on and so forth. So you could choose to only look at, let's say, salute to nurses, let's say last year. So we're trying to get an idea of how much we sold last year in our salute to nurses section. And then we'll just leave the revenue schedule owner filter blank for now. So we can see both people who brought in which revenue. So we can see 11,500 was brought in by Solution Nurses in April. Now, if we want to get a broken down view of who brought in what, it lists the 4 different campaigns, and then who actually brought that revenue. So you can see Michelle brought in this one, and then Kim brought in these 2 others. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the other dashboard here. So this is the number of booked media campaigns per month per year. So this is if you just want to, let's say, see this one hasn't been refreshed since November. Let's say you just want to see how many media campaigns have you specifically sold in, like, let's say this fiscal year. So let's look at Kim because technically Kimberly hasn't sold any yet. And it might take a second. Okay, so we can see in January she's sold 38 different media campaigns with a total amount net 3 of 123,000. In February, she sold 16 for 46,000. So this might be a good report just to kind of see what you've done so far. And then it also shows you your top campaigns and which ones brought in the most revenue. Always good to kind of check in. Okay. And then the final one, and this is for your accounts that you own that have not been contacted in the last 30, 60 days. So this report looks a little bit complicated, but really you only want to pay attention to like the top 3 different reports. It breaks it down to a couple different things, but I think that just these top 3 are the most useful. So you always want to refresh it. And the 3 filters on this one are really different from the other ones that we were looking at. So the other dashboards we're looking at were specifically for revenue, or we're just looking at media campaigns. This one's just looking at your accounts. So it breaks it down by your advertiser accounts and then your prospect accounts. It also breaks it down by your account owner. So let's say you want to look at your accounts. Let's say you wanted to look at accounts that you've added in maybe this year, or yeah, let's do this year. And then do you want to look at your actual advertisers, so those accounts that have already advertised with Newshawk or have a signed advertising agreement, or do you just want to look at your prospects, people that have never advertised with Newshawk before but might be worth reaching or should be reached out to, say, in the near future. Now, let's see. I'm not sure how many new accounts have been added that Kimberly owns that were created this year. We'll just find out. These definitely take a second because we do have a lot of prospects in the system. So as you can see, none of Kimberly's prospects have been added this last year. Let's see just all of her prospects. Let's say we do not care about when the account was created in Salesforce. We just want to see everything in the system that's owned by Kimberly and is a prospect. Okay, so as you can see, there's a lot of prospects that have not been contacted recently. So there's 634 prospects that have not been contacted in the last 30 days, 632 in the last 60 days, and 628 in the last 90 days. So that means only about, let's see, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. So 6 prospects were actually contacted in the last 90 days. So this might be a really good list of people that you want to go through. That's a lot of people that haven't been contacted. So let's quickly also look at, okay, so which advertisers haven't been contacted? These are people that will most likely be your repeat business. So it's taking a second to load. I'm not sure how much these numbers will change. Sometimes if it takes longer than a few minutes, I'll like force the whole page to refresh. But it's basically the same information. So 118 of your advertisers have not had any contact or activity in the last 30 days. And what we count as a contact or, I'm sorry, as contact or an activity is either an email sent via EBSTA or you've logged a phone call. Basically one of those two, or you've had a meeting that's been logged in the system. So it's either going to be an email, a phone call, or a meeting. And that's what the system says, oh, okay, they've contacted them in the last 30 days. So there's 95 that haven't been contacted in the last 90 days. So it might be a good list of people to go over. If you do scroll down, some of these reports, this will show that you've contacted, or these accounts have been contacted by someone 47 times, or 47 people, I'm sorry, have been contacted in the last 30 days. 59. So this might be just a good report to use if you're just trying to get an idea. Okay, who have I not talked to in a while, and who should I be looking at for repeat business? Okay, so that's just a brief summary of some dashboards that might be useful. It's completely up to you what you use. We also have really useful list views, which I will show you right now, and we've gone over before. So if you go on advertisers, all of these views options right here are what we call our list views. So these can be helpful for also just kind of gathering really quick information on who I should follow up with. So maybe you just added some prospects this week and you want to follow up with them. So let's say you want to follow up with these prospects, you just added them. Or let's say you want to follow up with any of our lapsed advertisers, so people who haven't advertised in about 2 years. Say you want to reach out and see if there's anything going on with them. Also, media campaigns are a very good one because a lot of these list views are kind of action items. So you can see any expiring contracts that are coming up. Those might be people you want to contact very soon. You can also see which campaigns you might have in the pipeline, so on and so forth. Okay, hope that gives you a good summary. We can go over everything in our meeting and also in the manual.